Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping into a world that has been quietly waking up at 5:30 a.m. every morning for the past 600 years. A world inside the Forbidden City where silent gardeners have tended imperial trees, lotus ponds, and ancient stones with a routine so gentle, so repetitive, so meditative that it became their own path to inner peace. Close your eyes and picture it. The sun rising over 980 ancient buildings, soft footsteps echoing through 72 hectares of courtyards, and a team of caretakers performing the same delicate motions their ancestors repeated for centuries, brushing dust from roots, listening to the breath of water, touching bark as if touching memory itself. Tonight, we're going to slow down with them. We're going to enter their rhythm, the rhythm that kept the gardens alive through emperors, wars, dynasties,
what a peaceful
storms,
morning.
and time
The flowers
itself.
are finally opening.
Like the
Truly
Mesopotamian
breathtaking.
scribes who once pressed tiny wedge-shaped marks into clay. Hour after hour, day after day, these imperial gardeners found serenity in repetition. Their quiet rituals, their mindful movements, their devotion to each leaf and each stone will guide you into a softer night. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, let the gardens breathe for you, and allow the next quiet moments to settle your thoughts like dust falling in still air. Dawn arrives softly over the Forbidden City, not with trumpet calls or royal drums, but with a long, gentle breath of light sliding across the tiles that have seen 6 centuries pass like drifting clouds. Before the world outside stirs, the palace is already awake in its own ancient way. The 72 hectares of red walls and golden roofs inhale
The
first
lotus
warmth
flowers
of
are
the sun.
lovely this morning.
And among the
Yes,
980
the dew is still
buildings,
upon them.
the gardens begin to open their eyes. The air is cool, almost tender, carrying the faint scent of pine needles,
The mist
stone
is beautiful
after rain,
this morning, isn't
and
it?
the quiet
Yes,
promise
it truly
of
is
another day that
breathtaking.
will unfold exactly as it did centuries before. High on the curved roofs, swallows trace slow circles, their wings whispering against the pale sky. Somewhere deep within the maze of courtyards, a wooden gate creaks the way it has creaked since emperors walked these paths. But at this hour, there are no rituals, no royal footsteps, only the silent guardians of the imperial gardens, the caretakers whose lives were woven into the rhythm of this place long before any of us were born. They enter the garden without hurry, as if their bodies remember every stone, every branch, every blade of grass. Their hands move with the calm certainty of people who have tended the same land, generation after generation. Some of them are descendants of former palace workers, carrying stories passed down like seeds. Others came much later, drawn not by duty, but by the strange peace that hangs in the Forbidden City before morning fully arrives. The gardens here are unlike any others in the world. They are not displays of wealth or symbols of power. They are sanctuaries of balance, crafted according to ancient principles that believed nature mirrors the state of the human heart.
A crooked pine symbolizes endurance. A pair of ornamental rocks represents mountains and rivers. A small courtyard of bamboo whispers resilience even under winter snow. As the caretakers move through the stillness, they do not speak, not because they are forbidden to speak, but because the palace itself invites quiet. Birds chirp softly above them, the kind of sound that settles into your breathing, making each inhale slower, deeper, steadier. The caretakers sweep fallen leaves that do not need sweeping,
The
trim
master
branches
artist
that
truly
barely
captured
need
the
trimming,
serenity of the
touch
Imperial garden.
stones worn smooth
Indeed.
over centuries. Their work is not about maintenance, it is about presence, about returning the garden to harmony day after day, knowing it will shift again by evening. And that is the beauty of it. The garden is alive not because it changes dramatically, but because it changes subtly, like a mind clearing itself one peaceful thought at a time. If you close your eyes now, you can almost hear their steps, soft, measured, barely brushing the gravel. You can almost feel the way the sunlight slowly fills the courtyard, warming the red walls until they glow like embers. You can sense the breath of history lifting the thin morning mist, the way a story lifts when someone finally begins to tell it. For 600 years, the garden has woken like this, not in haste, not in silence, but in a soft symphony of tiny sounds. Bamboo leaves touching, soil shifting, a distant bell, the crack of ice melting on a stone basin. These sounds form a language older than any dynasty, and the caretakers understand it without needing to translate. They step into the day as if stepping into meditation, where their minds grow quiet and their movements grow slow, matching the breath of the ancient earth beneath them. In this
It is
moment,
finally
the
cool
garden
enough to
is
walk
not
in
a
the
relic
courtyard.
of history.
The
It is a
sunrise over
living
the red
companion,
walls is stunning.
patient and calm, waiting for the sun to rise a little higher so its true colors can unfold.
As the sun slowly climbs higher, the light begins to glide deeper into the heart of the garden, revealing textures and details that were invisible moments ago. Moss on ancient stones glows like soft velvet. Dew on the leaves turns into tiny beads of glass that reflect the rising sky. And the trees, some older than the palace itself, stretch quietly as if waking from a long, dignified sleep. In this hour, the palace is neither fully awake nor fully dreaming. It exists in a serene in-between place where history feels close enough to touch, but gentle enough not to disturb. The caretakers sense this too. Their movements grow slower, almost reverent, and the silence around them thickens into something sacred. They begin tending to the pines first, because the pines have always been the elders of the garden. Standing through dynasties, storms, earthquakes, and seasons of war and peace, these trees are living witnesses of everything the Forbidden City has endured. The caretakers brush their hands lightly over the bark, as if greeting an old teacher. They check the roots, the soil, the slope of the earth, knowing that the harmony of the entire garden depends on how these elders feel. A single pine leaning too far, a branch growing without balance, these are signs that something in the energy of the garden is shifting.
To an untrained eye, nothing seems unusual. But to someone who has spent decades here, the smallest change speaks loudly. Then they move toward the ornamental rocks, the spirit stones shaped by centuries of water and wind. Each one was chosen with purpose, not for beauty alone, but for the story its veins and hollows carried. Some stones resemble mountains, others resemble waves. A few look like frozen clouds. In ancient philosophy, these stones were believed to hold the breath of the earth itself. So as the caretakers wash their surfaces, removing dust gathered overnight, it is not just cleaning. It is a ritual of awakening, a quiet way of telling the garden, we are here, we are listening. And the garden listens back. A breeze moves through the bamboo grove, creating a rustling sound that feels almost like whispering.
Of this earth.
Not eerie,
It is rich,
not
yet
alarming, just a gentle reminder that everything alive communicates, even if we no longer understand its language. The caretakers pause to listen. Their breathing synchronizes with the sway of bamboo. For a brief moment, time feels suspended, as if the world has narrowed to nothing but these small, delicate sounds of morning. As the sun rises higher, it touches the tiled pathways where emperors once walked in embroidered slippers, accompanied by ministers who feared their moods, concubines who feared their silence, and guards who feared nothing at all. But the caretakers do not think of power or palace intrigue. Their concerns are humble: the moisture of the soil, the health of roots, the patterns of shadows. These things endure longer than politics. These things remain when dynasties fall. A caretaker kneels beside a stone basin filled with clear water and gently skims away the fallen petals floating on the surface. The petals are from the pear trees that bloom every spring, their blossoms so white that under morning sun they look like drifting snow. He watches the
Look how
petals
the master
swirl
captured the
before
beauty
they
of these
settle again.
stones.
Truly,
No
they seem to
motion is
breathe
wasted
the
in
morning
the
mist.
garden. Even the falling of a single petal feels like part of a long, ancient rhythm. A young apprentice,
Look how the stone
one of the
resembles the
few
misty
allowed
peaks
to
of Mount
learn
Blue.
under these
Indeed,
elders,
and the hollows
enters
suggest
the
waves
courtyard with
crashing on the
soft,
shore.
tentative steps. His hands are steady, but his eyes carry the curiosity of someone still discovering the soul of the garden. He bows quietly before touching anything, not out of fear, but out of respect. Remember, the senior caretaker whispers softly, you do not shape the garden shapes you. And in that simple reminder lies the wisdom of 600 years. The Forbidden City has always been a place where silence teaches more than words, and where patience reveals truths that rush cannot. As the morning deepens, the rhythm of their work becomes almost invisible. It blends into the sound of cicadas waking one by one, into the distant hush of wind crawling along the palace walls, into the steady heartbeat of a place that has survived emperors, revolutions, and time itself. The caretakers are not preserving history, they are living inside it, step by soft step, breath by slow breath, allowing the garden to guide them into another day that will unfold like all the days before it, gently, thoughtfully, and without haste. As morning settles into its full, quiet strength, The forbidden city takes on the glow of a world suspended between memory and breath. The garden, now fully awake, does not rush to show its beauty. Instead, it reveals itself slowly, like a scroll painting unrolling in gentle silence. Every surface, every shadow, every leaf feels touched by time, but not controlled by it. The caretakers continue their silent choreography, following paths their ancestors once walked, paths worn so smooth that the stones seem to remember each step. Their routines look simple, brushing a pathway, adjusting a lantern, lifting a fallen branch, but each gesture is guided by centuries of observation. Nothing in the garden is accidental. Every corner is shaped by philosophy, every placement chosen to balance earth, water, wind, and sky. In the northern courtyard, where sunlight arrives a little later, one caretaker kneels beside an old flowering plum tree. Its branches twist like soft calligraphy strokes against the pale morning. This tree has bloomed through the rise and fall of dynasties, its blossoms peaceful witnesses to coronations, betrayals, celebrations, and nights so quiet that even snow dared not make a sound when it fell. The caretaker gently removes a single wilted petal still clinging to its branch. It is a tiny motion, almost invisible, but done with the tenderness one would give to an aging friend. In another corner of the garden, near an artificial hill built to resemble a mountain range in miniature, two caretakers tend to a small waterfall. The water slips over the rocks like satin, pooling into a clear basin that reflects the sky. The waterfall is not loud. It murmurs, almost meditates, as if whispering the stories of all who once sat beside it. Emperors who needed calm before difficult decisions, court scholars who recited poems here at dusk, lonely concubines who found comfort listening to the gentle rhythm of falling water. While tending the rocks, one caretaker pauses to straighten a small stone that has shifted slightly overnight. To most people, it would seem irrelevant, but in the ancient principles of garden making, the placement of a stone is the placement of a world. A stone leaning the wrong way can break the flow of chi, the breathing energy that moves through the garden like an unseen river. And so the stone is adjusted just a few millimeters until harmony hums quietly again. Across the courtyard, the young apprentice from earlier carries a wooden bucket filled with water from the well. The bucket is heavier than it looks, carved from old cypress wood darkened by decades of use. He moves carefully, mindful not to spill even a drop. As he passes beneath a carved wooden archway, sunlight filters through the lattice, scattering patterns across his face like shifting shadows on a painted scroll. He kneels beside a cluster of bamboo shoots. Their green stalks sway gently even without wind, as if bowing in greeting. Bamboo has always symbolized the soul of the scholar, hollow inside, not empty, flexible, not weak. The apprentice pours water slowly, his movements steady but unsure. His master watches from a distance, not correcting him, not instructing, simply observing. In this garden, learning happens the way dawn arrives, softly, without force, Over time, the apprentice's hands will learn what their eyes cannot yet see. When the soil is too thirsty, when the roots whisper for space, when a plant is grieving the absence of sunlight. These things cannot be taught quickly, they must be lived. And that is the essence of the garden's 600-year legacy, knowledge that grows like moss, quietly, patiently, faithfully. As the final layer of morning light settles over the rooftops, the palace begins to stir beyond the garden walls. Footsteps echo in distant corridors. A door slides open with a soft wooden sigh. Somewhere far away, a gong rings once, deep and calm, marking the transition from dawn's embrace into the day's duties. But inside the garden, there is no shift in pace. The caretakers continue with the same unhurried rhythm, for their world is not governed by hours or bells. It is
The
governed by
blossoms fall like
nature's
snow
breath,
this morning.
slow,
A fleeting
ancient,
beauty,
and
Master.
constant. A soft breeze drifts through the imperial cypress trees, carrying with it the scent of earth warming beneath the sun. Shadows rearrange themselves across stone paths, shifting like wandering spirits. At the center of the garden stands the pavilion of heavenly purity, its red columns glowing in the morning light. Though the emperors who once sought solace there are gone, their presence lingers like faint ink marks that time has not completely erased. One caretaker stands before the steps, eyes half closed, breathing deeply. He is not praying, he is simply aligning himself with the stillness around him. For in this place, the act of breathing is itself a ritual. And so the morning passes, not in minutes, but in sensations. The coolness of stone, the warmth of sunlight, the weight of silence, the softness of wind. This is how the garden keeps its memory alive, not through grand gestures, but through the peaceful repetition of care. 600 years have shaped this quiet sanctuary. Today, in the soft glow of morning, the caretakers continue what their ancestors began, guarding not just the garden, but the tranquility of the entire Forbidden City.
In the quiet heart of the Forbidden City, where stone walls echo with 6 centuries of whispers, the Imperial Lotus ponds begin to stir with the first warmth of morning. These ponds have existed
cypress
for
trees are
generations,
truly majestic this
cradling the
morning.
same lineage of
Indeed,
royal lotus
the scent of the
flowers,
earth is
delicate
warm.
yet enduring, fragile yet possessing a kind of ancient courage that allowed them to bloom through dynasties, storms, and countless silent dawns. To the untrained eye, a lotus
The morning
pond
mist
is simply a
beautiful
body of
today.
water filled with
Indeed,
leaves and
the
blossoms.
pavilion looks magnificent
But to
in
the
this
silent
light.
guardians of the Imperial Gardens, it is a living world with its own breath, memory, and temperament. The gardeners, men and women whose families have tended these waters for generations, approach the ponds not as workers, but as caretakers of a sacred being. Their footsteps slow as they near the water's edge, where the lotus leaves lie like green shields floating on mirrored stillness. Beneath the surface, slender stems sway gently, rooted deep in the dark, nourishing mud that has held stories for hundreds of years. Caring for royal lotuses is not simple horticulture. It is an art, a discipline, a meditation carried through the seasons. It begins with an understanding that the lotus is more than a flower. It is a symbol of purity rising from murky water, a reminder that beauty often grows from the unseen depths. And so the caretakers treat the ponds not as tasks to be managed, but as spirits to be respected. Every morning, before touching the water, the senior gardener pauses, closing his eyes briefly. It is not a ritual of superstition, but of gratitude, a moment to align his breath with the calm surface of the pond. The water holds the sky like polished glass, and for a second, it feels as though he is looking into another world. Only then does he begin. The first act of caring for the lotus is the ancient practice of water renewal, not replacing the water outright, never that. Doing so would shock the delicate ecosystem beneath the surface, disturbing the roots, the temperature, the fragile harmony the flowers rely on. Instead, water is changed slowly, intentionally, one small portion at a time. A wooden ladle carved 2 generations ago dips quietly into the pond. The sound is soft, like a whisper, a thin stream of water pouring out, making barely a ripple. This process is repeated patiently, for hours if needed, removing only a little water each time, then adding clean water warmed by the early sun, so the temperature difference will not startle the sleeping roots below. One breath at a time, the elders often say, just like the mind. Lotus care mirrors meditation, slow, steady, deliberate, each motion grounded in presence rather than speed. While the senior gardener works, a younger apprentice watches beside him. He sees how the elder dips the ladle with the gentleness one would use to touch the face of a sleeping child. He sees how the elder listens, not with ears, but with intuition to the faint movement of stems beneath the water. The apprentice longs to try, but he understands that lotus care is not something learned with hands first. It is learned with patience. The lotus ponds change with the seasons, and so must the caretakers. In spring, the ponds are quiet, pregnant with possibility. Buds sleep beneath the water like dreams waiting for warmth. In summer, the lotus blooms rise proudly, unfolding pink petals that catch the sunlight the way silk catches a breeze. In autumn, the leaves fade into gold-green circles that curl slowly inward. In winter, the pond rests, breathing softly beneath a thin layer of frost, conserving its strength for the cycle to begin again. To tend the lotus through these seasons is to live in rhythm with time itself. It requires watchfulness, respect, and above all, patience that stretches beyond the span of human worries. A lotus cannot be rushed. A pond cannot be forced. Everything unfolds when it is ready, and the caretakers shape their lives around this truth. As the elder finishes the first round of water renewal, he lifts his face to the sky. The sun has fully risen now, painting the surface of the pond with gold. A single lotus leaf trembles lightly, though no wind touches it, as if acknowledging the care it received. The apprentice notices it and whispers, "It's alive." The elder gardener smiles softly. "Of course," he answers, "everything here is alive, even the silence." And in that moment, it becomes clear why this practice has lasted 600 years, not because the lotus needs humans, but because humans need the lotus. Its calm, its rhythm, its reminder that beauty comes not from force, but from quiet, patient tending.
By the time the sun begins to stretch across the palace roofs, the lotus pond has shifted into its mid-morning stillness, a stillness that feels almost sacred. The water, touched by the warmth of the new day, holds a faint shimmer, as though tiny flecks of gold are floating just beneath the surface. The senior gardener, now finished with the delicate ritual of water renewal, moves to the edge of the pond where the shadows of the lotus leaves form soft, rounded silhouettes. Here begins the second phase of caring for the imperial lotus, a phase that has been practiced in almost the exact same way since the Ming Dynasty. He crouches down, extending a hand to gently trace the edge of a leaf. The texture is cool and velvet soft, still damp with dew. Each leaf is a universe in itself, a platform of light and shadow where insects rest, raindrops travel slowly like wandering pearls, and sunlight pools in circular reflections. The lotus is unique among flowers because it thrives in contradiction. Its roots anchored in mud, its blossoms rising unstained into the air. For the gardeners, this duality represents the heart of their work. To nurture the lotus, one must honor both the depths unseen and the beauty unveiled. One must tend the mud as lovingly as the flower. This is why, after water renewal, the caretakers begin the slow inspection of the pond floor, not by stepping into the water or stirring it with tools. Such actions would disturb the environment, but by reading the surface like one reads the breath during meditation. A slight thickening of the water's color, a faint cloudiness near the roots, the behavior of fish that live beneath the lotus stems. These details whisper the condition of the mud below. The apprentice watches, fascinated, as the elder leans closer to the pond, eyes soft but focused. Mud is not dirty. Mud is the beginning. The apprentice nods, though he only half understands. But he will learn in time that the lotus does not bloom in spite of the mud, it blooms because of it. There is a harmony between decay and growth, a balance that must be respected. Too much mud and the roots suffocate, too little and the plant loses nourishment. The gardeners maintain this balance through the seasons, working with the natural rhythm of water, never against it. The elder gently dips his fingers into the water, barely touching its surface. Ripples spread in widening circles, each one soft enough not to disturb the leaves. The apprentice leans in, listening as though the water might speak. And in a way, it does. The surface trembles, reflecting the sky with a slightly different hue. The pond is breathing well today, the elder says softly, and the apprentice smiles at the idea that a pond breathes like a living creature. The elder takes a small bamboo skimmer, light enough not to disrupt the water, and begins to remove bits of debris that may have gathered overnight. A fallen leaf, a thin sliver of bark, the petals left behind by last night's wind. Each movement is unhurried, thoughtful, like brushing dust off a treasured painting. In this way, the pond is kept clean without ever being scrubbed,
guided without ever being controlled. As the elder works, the apprentice's gaze drifts toward a cluster of lotus buds preparing to bloom. Their pointed tips push softly through the water's surface, held upright by slender stems that sway with grace. To anyone else, they might look like simple buds, but to those who tend the imperial ponds, each bud is a promise, a quiet declaration that beauty is on its way. And like all promises, it must be welcomed with care. "Do we help them open?" the apprentice asks. The elder gives a gentle laugh. "No," he replies, "we only help them feel safe enough to open on their own." The apprentice contemplates this, letting the words settle into him like a pebble sinking through clear water. Around them, the palace begins to wake more fully. Distant footsteps pass along the lacquered corridors, and the faint clatter of morning preparations drift over the walls. But here by the lotus pond, time continues to flow at its slower, older rhythm. The lotus leaves sway with a breeze too soft to be felt. The water settles back into perfect stillness. A dragonfly lands on a leaf, shimmering green and gold in the sunlight. The apprentice watches it for a long moment, his breathing unconsciously matching the gentle motion of the pond. "Like tending the mind," the elder finally says, breaking the silence. "One small adjustment at a time." The apprentice nods again, this time with deeper understanding. In the quiet harmony of the lotus pond, he begins to sense the thread that binds the craft together, an unbroken link between nature's rhythm and the human heart, each teaching the other how to remain calm, steady, and unshaken through every season of life.
As the morning deepens into gentle clarity, the lotus pond glows with a soft radiance that seems to rise not only from the sunlight, but from the flowers themselves. The gardeners have always believed that the lotus carries its own quiet light, one born from centuries of patience and care. Now, with the water calm and the leaves rested, the elder gardener begins the final part of the morning ritual, a ritual that shapes not only the pond, but the spirit of those tending it. He steps back from the water's edge, letting the apprentice take a closer look. It is through careful observation that the younger generation begins to understand the deeper rhythms of the pond. The apprentice crouches, seeing the details his eyes once skimmed over. The subtle sway of the submerged stems, the faint shadow of a fish gliding beneath the surface, the way the lotus leaves form gentle circles that never quite touch, yet always feel connected. The lotus teaches separation without loneliness, the elder murmurs behind him. The apprentice repeats the words softly, unsure if he's meant to understand them yet. The elder continues, "Each leaf floats on its own, but the water binds them all." It is a lesson about community, about individuality without isolation, a philosophy woven into centuries of imperial garden craft. The elder then shifts into the task of checking the sunlight. Lotus flowers adore the morning sun, but shrink from harsh midday heat. Too much light, and the petals wilt. Too little, and the blossoms stay shy, refusing to open. The elder raises his palm toward the sky, letting the slant of the light rest on his skin. He studies the shadows cast by the towering palace walls, shadows that shift minute by minute. In this vast palace of 980 buildings, even a slight change in architectural shadow can influence the mood of the lotus pond. Over centuries, gardeners have learned to read these shadows as carefully as scholars read scrolls. The apprentice watches, fascinated by the silent conversation between man and sunlight. "The lotus knows light better than we do," the elder says. "We just learn to listen." He gestures toward a lotus bud whose petals have begun to blush faint pink. "This one will open tomorrow." The apprentice smiles. "How can you tell?" "By the way it holds its breath," the elder replies, his voice soft as drifting mist. That is the essence of lotus care, learning to see what cannot be seen, to sense what cannot be measured, to understand timing not by clocks, but by life itself. The elder gardener steps aside, allowing the apprentice to place his hands in the final ritual of the morning, guiding the floating leaves. Throughout the night, wind may have nudged some leaves into slight disorder, causing them to overlap or shade one another. Though the lotus will survive regardless, harmony is essential to the imperial garden. With gentle motions of a bamboo stick, the apprentice nudges the leaves into balanced spacing, each one given room to breathe, each allowed its own circle of sunlight. The elder observes quietly. "You do not command the pond," he murmurs. "You invite it." As the apprentice works, something changes within him, not a dramatic realization, but a soft settling, like silt drifting slowly to the pond floor. He begins to understand that gardening in the Forbidden City is not about control or achievement, it is about attunement. The pond reflects the gardener's mind. If he is hurried, the water becomes cloudy. If he is calm, the water stays clear. When the leaves finally rest in perfect spacing, the elder nods in approval. "Good," he says. "Now the pond can breathe." The final step is simple, but carries profound meaning. Offering stillness. The gardeners stand side by side, facing the pond. They do nothing. No trimming, no watering, no adjusting. They simply breathe. It is a moment of shared silence, a moment when time ceases to matter, when the pond and its caretakers mirror each other. The apprentice closes his eyes. The breeze brushes his face. The sound of distant palace life fades into a soft murmur. His breath slows. And in that pause, the garden seems to breathe with him. "This," the elder whispers, "is the part most people overlook. The lotus does not bloom from work alone. It blooms from stillness." The apprentice absorbs the words. He feels how true they are, not just for lotus care, but for the heart, for the mind, for life itself. The Imperial Lotus Pond, with its soft petals and silent depths, becomes a symbol of a truth that has guided 6 centuries of caretakers. Growth is not forced, beauty is not hurried, and peace comes not from what we do, but from how gently we allow things to unfold. As the morning ritual ends, the elder touches his hands together, bowing slightly toward the pond. The apprentice mirrors the gesture. Before them, a single lotus leaf catches a bead of sunlight, glowing like a tiny lantern on the water. And in that glow, the quiet legacy of 600 years continues. One breath, one ripple, one patient moment at a time.
In a quiet corner of the Forbidden City, far from the echo of ceremonial drums and the polished footsteps of officials who once walked these halls, stand the ancient guardians of the palace grounds. 400-year-old Panlong Sophora trees. Their trunks twist like sleeping dragons. Their branches curl in bold arcs shaped by centuries of wind, storms, sunlight, and silence. These trees have watched emperors rise and fall, watched seasons fold into one another like pages of an endless scroll. Today, they stand not as relics, but as living elders whose presence brings a deep and grounding calm to the garden. For the Imperial gardeners, descendants of lineages that have tended these grounds for generations, caring for the Panlong Sophora trees is both an honor and a responsibility heavier than any title. The trees are older than any memory, older than any living gardener's lifetime. And so the care they require is not rushed, not forced, but carried out with a reverence normally reserved for ancient teachers. Early in the morning, before sunlight fully touches the palace walls, the senior gardener approaches the oldest Panlong Sophora tree. Its bark, thick and furrowed, tells a story in every line. To some, these cracks might seem like signs of decay, but to the gardeners, each scar, each groove, each weathered ridge is a chapter of history, evidence of survival. Every wrinkle is a story, the elder often says, and every story deserves to be heard. He places a hand gently against the bark. The texture is rough, warm from yesterday's sun, and alive in a way that only something ancient can be. The Panlong Sophora does not move, yet it feels as though it acknowledges him. Perhaps this is imagination, or perhaps it is simply the understanding that comes from tending the same tree every day for decades. The apprentice stands beside him, taking in the sight of the great tree. From this angle, the trunk looks like a river, wide, winding, carved slowly by time. "How old is it?" the apprentice whispers. The elder smiles softly. 4 centuries, maybe more. Long before your ancestors dreamed of this place, this tree was already listening to the wind. And indeed, the tree seems to hum with memory. Its branches twist in spirals that resemble dragon coils, a form so unique and revered that it gave the tree its name, Panlong, coiled dragon. Caring for such an elder tree begins with understanding its weight. Sophora wood is dense, its branches strong but heavy. Over centuries, the natural bending of time weighs down even the healthiest limbs, causing stress that can lead to cracks or breaks if left unsupported. This is where the gardener's gentle artistry comes in. The elder gardener directs the apprentice's attention toward a wooden support beam rising beside one of the thicker branches. The beam is smooth, carved from old cypress, and placed with careful precision to bear just enough weight, not to lift the branch, not to change its shape, but to ease its burden. "We do not correct the tree," the elder says. "We relieve it." The apprentice nods slowly, beginning to understand. These support systems are not inventions of modern garden care. They date back centuries. Imperial gardeners of the Ming and Qing dynasties used stone, wood, and even living bamboo stalks to gently support aging trees, allowing them to grow in their natural, time-shaped forms without suffering under their own weight. The elder adjusts the position of the beam by just a few millimeters. "Precision is kindness," he murmurs. "If you force too much, the tree feels fear. If you give too little, it feels pain." The apprentice breathes in deeply, letting the wisdom settle. The Panlong Sophora sways faintly, not from wind, but from its own steady life force, and the apprentice feels as though the tree is sighing, grateful for the small relief. The elder then examines one of the tree's old wounds, a deep vertical crack running down its trunk created long ago by a lightning strike. Instead of sealing it harshly, palace gardeners use natural remedies, soft moss, clay mixed with plant resin, and herbal pastes passed down across generations to help the tree heal at its own pace. "Trees heal slowly," the elder whispers, "just like age in the human body. Every crack is a memory, and every memory deserves gentleness." He applies the moss mixture with delicate fingers. The apprentice watches, realizing that this care is not merely botanical. It is emotional, spiritual, a dialogue between generations of humans and a being that has lived through more history than any of them ever will. Above them, sunlight finally breaks over the palace roof and glides down the bark of the Panlong Sophora, illuminating ridges and scars like glowing strokes in a painting. The tree seems to stand taller, as if proud of its long and weathered story. And in that glowing moment, the apprentice finally understands what his teacher has been trying to show him: that caring for these ancient trees is not simply preservation, it is companionship across centuries, a quiet promise passed down from gardener to gardener, breath to breath, hand to hand.
By mid-morning, the light filtering through the garden shifts into a soft golden hue, illuminating the Panlong Sophora trees like ancient sculptures brought to life. Their twisted limbs cast long shadows that ripple across the stone pathways. Shadows that dance with the passing breeze, yet remain anchored by centuries of stillness. The elder gardener steps carefully around the base of the tree, tracing an invisible circle, a boundary he has walked thousands of times. This boundary is not marked by stones or rope. It is formed by tradition and memory, a space where the presence of the tree is treated with the same reverence as a living shrine. The apprentice follows quietly, noticing details he overlooked before: the way sunlight pools inside the grooves of the bark, the way the roots emerge from the soil like weathered sculptures molded by time, the way fallen leaves gather gently at the foot of the trunk, forming a soft cushion that protects the roots from heat and cold. These trees, the elder says softly, do not age the way we do. Their years do not weaken them, they deepen them. The apprentice looks up at the massive trunk, imagining the storms it has endured, the snow it has carried, the lightning that once tore through its bark, and yet here it stands, still breathing, still growing, still offering shade to a garden that has changed 100 times over. The elder kneels beside a section of exposed root, brushing away a thin layer of dust. Roots, he murmurs, carry the weight of memory. If they suffer, the whole tree remembers the pain. He invites the apprentice to kneel beside him. Together, they examine the roots, paying attention not to their size or shape, but to their breath, the subtle rhythm of life pulsing through them. The apprentice places a careful hand on the root, surprised by the warmth beneath his palm. "It feels alive," he whispers. "It is alive," the elder answers, "and it listens." In caring for the Panlong Sophora trees, the gardeners perform a ritual rarely seen by those outside the Imperial grounds, the natural support system, an ancient method of gently redirecting the weight of aging branches without altering their form. Today they prepare to check one of these living supports, a series of bamboo poles planted years earlier around a drooping branch. Unlike wooden beams, bamboo grows, shifts, and adapts. Its flexibility allows it to cradle the branch without restricting its movement. As they approach the bamboo supports, the elder runs his fingers along one pole. "Bamboo understands patience," he says. "It bends but never breaks. That is why it is chosen to support elders." The apprentice listens, absorbing every word. Bamboo supporting Sophora, life supporting life. It is a quiet, poetic system passed down through generations, symbolizing the belief that the old and the young must sustain each other. The elder inspects the alignment of the bamboo poles, checking the angle of each one. The apprentice watches as the elder gently shifts one pole no more than the width of a fingernail. "This small?" the apprentice asks. "This small," the elder confirms. "Large changes cause fear. Small changes bring healing." The apprentice lets the idea settle into his thoughts like dew settling on leaves. Healing, he realizes, is rarely loud. It is almost always quiet, steady, done in increments the world does not notice. As they move deeper into the grove of Sophora trees, the elder directs the apprentice's attention to a scar running across one of the branches. It is deep, darkened by time, shaped by a long-ago wound when the wind snapped the branch during a harsh winter storm. Instead of seeing damage, the elder sees resilience. "Do you see this line?" he asks. The apprentice nods. "This is not a flaw," the elder says. "It is a story." He takes out a small pouch of herbal resin, thick and fragrant, mixed with fine soil from the garden. This ancient mixture is used not to hide scars, but to soothe them, to keep insects away, to help the tree seal itself slowly from within. The elder applies the mixture with slow, circular movements. Trees do not forget, but they learn to live with their past, just like us. A soft breeze travels through the grove, brushing their faces. Leaves whisper above them, creating a sound that feels both like a lullaby and a confession. The apprentice closes his eyes for a brief moment, letting the sound wash over him. He realizes that the trees are not quiet. They speak in ways that require slowing down to hear. The creak of thick branches, the gentle scrape of leaves brushing against bark, the faint sigh of roots shifting beneath the soil.
Do they suffer? The apprentice asks gently. The elder thinks for a moment before answering. Not in the way we do, but they feel pressure, heat, cold, storm, time, and they feel relief when we help them. It is a simple truth, but profound. Relief, care, companionship. These trees, older than empires, respond to human gentleness, not through words, but through subtle shifts. A leaf uncurling, a branch lifting slightly after decades of bearing weight, a trunk thickening in healthy rhythm. As the elder finishes applying the resin, he leans back and gazes up at the tree. Sunlight filters through the leaves, casting moving patterns across his face. Age is not something to fight, he says softly. It is something to accompany. The apprentice follows his gaze upward, feeling a deep quiet settle inside him. A quiet that mirrors the tree's own timeless stillness. In that moment, beneath the twisting branches of the Panlong Sophora, he understands that caring for these ancient trees is not a task. It is a relationship, a bond shaped across centuries, a promise renewed with each gentle touch. And with that realization, the apprentice bows slightly toward the tree, not because he was instructed, but because reverence rises naturally when standing before something that has lived for 400 years of wind and silence.
As the light of late morning settles softly into the garden, the Panlong Sophora trees seem to breathe with deeper ease, their coiled branches glowing with a warmth that feels almost human. The elder and the apprentice stand beneath one of the largest trees, its canopy spreading like an umbrella woven from centuries of patience. The air here feels heavier, not in a burdensome way, but in the way a quiet library feels heavy, as though every inch holds memories that have not yet finished whispering. The elder gardener steps closer to the trunk, his hand brushing lightly across a section of bark that appears smoother than the rest. This spot, he explains, was once the site of a severe injury, a crack so deep that generations before him feared the tree would not survive. But through years of natural remedies, careful support, and a watchful heart, the tree sealed itself, layer by layer, in a slow healing only time could pace. You see, the elder says softly, a wound does not disappear. It becomes part of the strength. The apprentice lets his fingers rest on that healed surface, feeling the faint rise of new wood that formed to protect what was once broken. It is unlike the rest of the bark, smoother, warmer, like a scar that has learned to carry sunlight. Every crack, the elder continues, is a chapter, and chapters are not erased, they are read. The words linger, settling into the cool air. The apprentice begins to understand that caring for these ancient trees is less about preserving perfection and more about honoring the imperfect truth of time. They continue walking around the tree, and the elder points to another subtle detail, the direction of the trunk's slow lean. Over centuries, wind, earthquakes, and shifting soil have nudged the tree into a slight, graceful arc. Rather than forcing it upright, the gardeners built low stone platforms to shape the ground beneath it, allowing the tree to remain in its natural posture while still keeping balance. "Wouldn't it be safer to make it straight?" asked the apprentice. "Straight," the elder replied gently, "is not always strong. A tree must grow the way its life carries it. Our task is not to change its story, but to help it continue telling it." The thought settles into the apprentice's chest like a warm stone. They then move toward the far side of the grove, where younger Sophora trees, only a century old, stand beside their 400-year-old elders. Their trunks are slender, their branches more pliant, their bark still mottled with youthful patterns rather than the deep-grooved script of age. These younger trees were planted deliberately near the elders, forming what the gardeners call the lineage corridor, a place where the old and the young share soil, light, and air. The elder stops and gestures gently toward the younger trees. He explains they grow better here because they inherit the wisdom of the old. The apprentice tilts his head, puzzled. How can a tree inherit anything? The elder smiles faintly. Roots speak, not in words, but in signals. Moisture, nutrients, the push and pull of soil. The young learn from the old how to survive drought, how to rest during harsh winters, how to anchor themselves when storms arrive. The apprentice's eyes soften with wonder as he imagines invisible threads beneath the soil, connecting roots across generations, sharing knowledge in the quiet language of survival. They move again, this time toward a wooden platform where the elder keeps an assortment of traditional tools: soft brushes for dusting bark, bamboo sticks for guiding branches, clay bowls filled with herbal mixtures. None of the tools look sharp or metallic. Everything is organic, shaped by hand, polished by years of use. We do not use metal on the elders unless necessary. Metal is decisive, final. But these trees need gentleness, not decisions. He picks up a soft brush and hands it to the apprentice. The apprentice steps forward, brushing away dust from a low branch, his movements slow and steady. The elder watches in silence, noting the way the apprentice's shoulders relax, the way his breath evens out. Caring for ancient trees requires a calm heart, and the apprentice's heart seems to be learning. A moment passes before the elder speaks again. "Look closely," he says. "What do you see?" The apprentice examines the branch he has been brushing. At first, he sees only bark, but as he looks deeper, he notices something subtle, the faint shimmer of sap beneath the surface, like a heartbeat. "It's alive," the apprentice whispers. "Yes," the elder says softly. "Age is not the end of life. Age is the deepening of it." The garden grows quiet again. The elder and the apprentice stand together beneath the canopy of twisted branches. A lone leaf, loosened by time rather than wind, breaks free and drifts downward, swirling slowly until it lands at the apprentice's feet. The apprentice bends down, picking it up gently.
The leaf is dry, curled, its veins delicate as calligraphy. "Is this sadness?" he asks. The elder shakes his head. It is a story reaching its final sentence, and the tree is already writing the next one. The apprentice holds the leaf with newfound tenderness, sensing its place within a much larger cycle, one that includes growth and decline, wounds and healing, birth and age. The elder rests a hand on the apprentice's shoulder. "Remember this," he murmurs. "We do not protect the trees from time. We accompany them through it." And in that soft revelation, the apprentice's understanding opens like the slow unfurling of a new leaf. The Panlong Sophora trees, standing silent and immense, become more than guardians of the palace. They become teachers of resilience, patience, and the quiet dignity of growing old. Sunlight spills across their coiled forms, lighting bark that has endured centuries of wind and silence. And in that tender glow, the gardeners stand with them, keepers of a legacy rooted not only in the earth, but in the fragile, enduring connection between human hands and ancient life.
Beneath the quiet elegance of the Forbidden City's gardens lies a hidden world few ever think about. A world where water moves with the calm intelligence of ancient engineering. As sunlight rises gently over the Imperial roofs, the apprentice follows the elder gardener toward a stone platform almost indistinguishable from the surrounding pathways. To an untrained eye, it is nothing more than a slab of carved stone. But to generations of Imperial gardeners, it is the entrance to the heart of the Emperor's irrigation wisdom. Water, the elder begins softly, is the breath of a garden. Too much, it chokes. Too little, it starves. But just enough, and everything learns how to thrive. With practiced ease, he lifts the stone panel slightly, revealing a dark opening beneath, cool and quiet like the inside of a forgotten temple. A faint murmur rises from below, the sound of running water echoing gently up the shaft. It is not loud, not forceful, but soft and continuous, like a distant stream humming at the edge of a dream. The apprentice leans closer, listening. The sound seems to slow his heartbeat. This, the elder says, is the Emperor's hidden river. He explains that beneath the Forbidden City lies an intricate network of underground canals built over 500 years ago, weaving through the palace grounds like the veins of an immense living body. These channels carry collected rainwater, snowmelt, and filtered ground moisture, guiding them to different gardens with a precision that modern engineers still admire. As the apprentice's eyes adjust to the darkness, he sees faint glimmers of water reflecting the morning light. The canal is lined with bricks baked in Imperial kilns, each brick shaped to interlock without mortar, allowing water to slide through smoothly. "How did they build something like this so long ago?" the apprentice whispers. The elder smiles, "By watching nature longer than anyone else." He steps aside, allowing the apprentice to kneel near the opening. The air rising from below is cool, carrying a scent of damp earth and age, a smell that feels untouched by time. "The system knows the seasons," the elder continues. "In spring, it sends gentle streams to wake the soil. In summer, it stores water deep underground to keep the roots cool. In autumn, it lets the earth dry just enough so trees can rest. And in winter, it shelters the water where frost cannot reach. The apprentice closes his eyes for a moment. The whisper of water becomes a soft lullaby, rising and falling in a rhythm that feels older than the palace itself. When he opens his eyes again, the elder is standing beside one of the garden's carved stone channels above ground. These channels, shaped like flowing ribbons, guide water across the surface, connecting ponds, courtyards, and clusters of trees. But the true brilliance lies in the subtle slopes carved into the stone. Slopes so precise that water flows at the perfect speed. Not rushing, not stagnant, but steady enough to hydrate everything it touches. Look closely, the elder says. Do you see how the path curves? The apprentice nods. The channel curves like a calligraphy stroke, widening slightly before narrowing again. The curve slows the water, the elder explains, and the narrowing guides it. The garden breathes according to the season. Above them, a breeze rustles through the bamboo grove. The sound mixes with the trickle of water, creating a natural symphony layered with ancient intention. The elder dips his fingers into the moving stream. Warm today, he murmurs. The water rises earlier in late spring. The apprentice mimics him, feeling the temperature with curiosity. If the water changes, do we adjust the garden? No, the elder replies. We adjust ourselves. The apprentice tilts his head, seeking deeper meaning. The elder gestures toward the stone channels. The water already knows what to do. Our role is to listen. And with that, he begins to guide the apprentice along the garden paths, pointing out small details, tiny openings carved into the stone, pressure holes disguised as decorative motifs, and shallow basins where water gathers before flowing on. This design was crafted by Imperial engineers who blended science with poetry, function with beauty, precision with philosophy. The elder pauses beside one such basin where water pools in a mirrored circle. Dragon scales carved along the rim glisten softly in the morning light. The apprentice watches as the surface ripples gently. This, the elder says, is where the water rests. Rest? Yes, he replies. Before water nourishes others, it must slow itself. The apprentice listens, absorbing the metaphor. Even water needs stillness. Even life requires pauses. And in the soft resonance of that truth, the garden feels like a vast breathing organism, ancient, patient, and wise. The elder closes the stone panel gently, sealing the underground canal once more. The emperor's irrigation system has lasted 6 centuries because it was built not to dominate nature, but to move with it. As the apprentice stands beside him, the faint echo of flowing water continues beneath their feet, steady, calm, eternal. A reminder that wisdom, like water, becomes stronger the more quietly it moves.
As the morning stretches into a gentler rhythm, the elder gardener guides the apprentice along a winding path that leads to one of the most remarkable hidden mechanisms of the Forbidden City's irrigation system, the seasonal regulator. Unlike the underground canals, which carry the quiet strength of constant flow, this regulator responds to the subtle shifts of temperature, humidity, and sunlight throughout the year. To the apprentice, it looks deceptively simple, a series of stone basins, narrow channels, and carved outlets positioned beneath the shade of an ancient pine. But the elder explains that each part of this design is calibrated with an accuracy born not of machines, but of centuries of observation. Nature tells us everything, he says, but only those who slow down can hear it. He kneels beside the first basin, dipping his fingers into the water. The surface trembles faintly at his touch, revealing a thin line of pollen drifting like golden dust. Pollen travels farther in the dry months, the elder says softly. When we see more pollen resting here, we know the air is becoming thirsty, so the garden must drink more. The apprentice looks at the basin with newfound respect. Nature's small signals, pollen, humidity, leaf texture, become instructions for altering the flow of water. The seasonal regulator channels water through a system of carved grooves that widen in summer and narrow in autumn. The apprentice is astonished when he notices the grooves have no mechanical parts, no gears, no metal. Everything is shaped by stone and gravity. The elder takes a slender bamboo rod and gently places it across one of the grooves. The rod begins to drift with the current, turning slowly. "See how it moves?" he asks. "Faster today. That means the water is warmer. Warm water flows with less resistance." The apprentice watches closely, mesmerized by how alive the water feels, how it responds like a living mind adjusting its pace. We change the water's direction using only shape and slope. No force, only guidance. They walk toward a larger circular basin surrounded by dragon markings carved into the stone floor. This is the seasonal heart of the irrigation system, where water gathers before being redistributed throughout the garden. The apprentice kneels beside it, listening to the soft trickle flowing from one of the carved mouths. It is a quiet sound, like someone sighing in their sleep. In the hottest days of summer, the elder explains, this basin catches excess heat. Water rests longer here, cooling itself before it continues. The apprentice touches the water and feels its mild temperature, a subtle coolness that contradicts the warming day. "It cools itself?" he whispers. "Yes," the elder says, "because water remembers the night." They move on to another structure, a small, narrow slip carved into a stone slab. It is nearly invisible, yet water flows through it with a delicate evenness. "This," the elder explains, "is the frost guardian. During winter, when temperatures plummet, this narrow passage slows the water until it thickens, becoming heavy and sheltered beneath the earth. It prevents freezing. It preserves life. If water froze here, the entire garden would suffer, but the emperor's engineers understood winter intimately. They shaped the stone to protect the flow." The apprentice's mind swirls with awe. Everything, every stone, curve, groove, holds centuries of thought. They wandered toward a shaded courtyard where a thin waterfall slides down a mossy rock wall. The water is soft, almost silent, breaking into gentle mist as it falls. "What is this one for?" the apprentice asks. The elder smiles. "Listening." The apprentice blinks. "Listening?" "Yes, this is the sound well. When the waterfall becomes louder, it means the water flow below is too strong. When it becomes faint, the system is slowing too much." The gardeners listen to adjust their understanding. The apprentice listens closely. The waterfall's voice is steady today, soft, restful, calm. It feels like the breath of the garden. The elder lets the silence stretch before saying, "In ancient times, the emperor believed that water was the most truthful advisor. It could not lie. If the garden was distressed, water revealed it. If the soil was content, water moved with ease." The apprentice places a hand on the stone wall, feeling the cool dampness. For a moment, he imagines the entire irrigation system as a giant sleeping dragon. Its breath, the flow of water, its heartbeat, the rhythm of the basins, its wisdom, hidden in the quiet currents beneath the palace. "Does the system ever get tired?" the apprentice asks. "No,"
the elder says thoughtfully, because it was built with humility. Humans did not force their will on nature. They shaped themselves around nature. They return to the first basin where the water continues its calm journey. A single leaf lands on the surface, floating gently before being carried away by the curve of the channel. The apprentice watches it drift, peaceful and unhurried. Water teaches us that the world is kinder when we move without resistance. And as the leaf disappears down the winding path, the apprentice feels a stillness settle into his heart, a stillness shaped by stone, water, and 6 centuries of quiet wisdom flowing beneath his feet.
The day grows warmer, yet the garden remains astonishingly cool, not because of shade alone, but because the water beneath the Forbidden City breathes with the precision of ancient wisdom. As the apprentice and the elder walk toward the northern edge of the Imperial grounds, the soft murmuring of water becomes clearer, echoing faintly beneath each stone tile they step on. It is as though the garden carries a pulse, a quiet heartbeat that has never missed a rhythm in 6 centuries. The elder stops beside a low wall adorned with intricate carvings of clouds and cranes. Beneath this wall lies one of the most remarkable features of the Emperor's irrigation design, the balancing chamber. It is neither a reservoir nor a pond, but a space where water gathers briefly to equalize pressure before continuing its journey. Most people never notice this place, the elder says gently, but the garden depends on it every moment. He lifts a narrow wooden lid, revealing a dark pool below. The water swirls slowly in a circular motion, moving with the grace of a dancer tracing ancient steps. The apprentice watches, mesmerized. "Why does it move in a circle?" he asks. "Because water seeks harmony," the elder replies, "and a circle is the gentlest way to rest." The balancing chamber acts as a mediator, allowing water from higher ground to calm before merging with slower channels. Without this pause, the force could erode soil, overwhelm roots, or disturb delicate plants. But within the chamber, the water sheds its haste and leaves quietly, like a visitor bowing before stepping into a sacred hall. As they move onward, the apprentice notices a long stone path lined with small clay pots placed at even intervals. Each pot has tiny perforations along its sides. "These," the elder explains, "are the breathers." The apprentice tilts his head. "Breathers?" "Yes, they allow the underground canals to release pressure and draw in air. Without air, water becomes heavy and tired." He lifts one pot carefully, showing the fine layer of condensation on its inner wall. "This tells us the canal below is balanced," he says. "When the surface inside is dry, we know the water is struggling." The apprentice gently places the pot back, overwhelmed by how every detail of the system, seen or unseen, carries intention and sensitivity. They walk farther into a shaded grove where a gentle mist hangs in the air. The apprentice looks up, expecting to see a waterfall, but instead discovers a line of tiny openings carved along the eaves of the palace roof. From these openings, droplets fall rhythmically into a long basin below. "Roof irrigation?" the apprentice guesses. The elder smiles. "Yes, rain is honored here. Even the sky participates in the garden." Tiny drops fall like silver threads. The sound is delicate, soft ticks echoing against stone, merging with the distant hum of underground water. In heavy storms, the roofs catch the rain, slow it, and let it fall gently here. This prevents flooding and teaches the water to arrive calmly. The apprentice closes his eyes, letting the rhythm settle into his body. Tick, pause, tick, pause.
a pulse that feels almost medicinal. Sleep comes easily when water moves like this. That is why the emperor built the system to sound like the world breathing. They continue deeper into the grove until they reach an ancient stone archway. Beneath it flows a shallow stream, one of the rare channels where the underground system reveals itself briefly to the open air. The water glides so quietly that it hardly creates ripples. This, the elder says softly, is the garden's voice. The apprentice kneels, touching the cool surface. He feels the gentle movement beneath his fingertips, steady, unwavering, timeless. Does it ever stop? He asks. The elder looks at the stream with a gaze almost reverent. No, he says, the water flows even when the palace sleeps, even when winter silences the world, even when no footsteps cross the courtyard for years. He pauses before adding, because the emperor believed that a garden should never lose its rhythm, not even for a day. They stand together beneath the archway. The apprentice notices faint engravings along the stone, whisper-like etchings made by gardeners centuries ago. Some are simple marks for measuring water height, others are tiny symbols, perhaps prayers for rain or gratitude for gentle seasons. The gardeners before us left stories, not written in books but carved in stone and guided through water. The apprentice traces the marks with a fingertip, imagining the hands that made them, the lives that passed here, the quiet dedication carried across generations like a hidden thread. A soft wind drifts through the archway, ruffling the surface of the stream. Sunlight scatters across the ripples in trembling golden fragments. The elder turns to the apprentice. Water, he says, is the oldest memory keeper in the Forbidden City. It remembers every season, every drought, every storm, every gardener who ever listened. He steps back, gesturing for the apprentice to stand where he stands. And now, he adds, it will remember you. The apprentice feels something shift inside him, a gentle widening, like a door opening silently in his chest. Beneath his feet, water continues its slow, eternal journey, carrying centuries of knowledge forward. And for the first time, he feels not just like a student of the garden, but a part of its history, woven into the quiet, shimmering tapestry of the emperor's timeless irrigation system.
Morning in the Forbidden City begins differently in the herbal courtyards. While other gardens awaken with the soft rustle of pine needles and the quiet glide of water beneath stone, this place wakes to a fragrance, gentle, ancient, and unmistakably alive. It drifts through the air like a memory unfolding, riding on the cool breath of dawn. Mugwort, chrysanthemum, ginseng, angelica, mint, and 100 other medicinal plants, some rare, some common, all treated with equal reverence, wait for the gardeners who have watched over them for generations. These plants are not merely herbs. They were the quiet healers of emperors, empresses, and scholars. Their essence carried through teas, balms, poultices, oils, and incense that shaped the rhythm of palace life. But here, in this sacred corner of the Forbidden City, they exist not as ingredients, but as living beings with breath, temperament, and cycles that must be understood rather than controlled. As the first light touches the herb beds, the senior gardener steps into the courtyard with a slow, deliberate calm. His presence alone seems to settle the air. Every movement he makes honors a tradition older than dynasties. He kneels beside the mugwort patch, closing his eyes, letting his palm hover just above the leaves. He is not checking the soil. He is feeling the energy, temperature, moisture, tension in the air around the plant. To him, this is a conversation. Only when the plant feels settled does he begin. The apprentice arrives a few moments later, carrying a shallow bamboo basket and a soft bristled brush. His footsteps are careful, but still carry the youthful eagerness of someone witnessing a world he has yet to unveil fully. "Why do we begin here?" he whispers. The elder opens his eyes slowly. Because mugwort listens first. If it rests well, the rest of the garden follows. The apprentice nods, though he only partly understands. But understanding is not urgent here. Nothing is urgent. In the herbal courtyard, time stretches like warm tea in a cup, spreading its calm through every breath. The elder lifts a single leaf of mugwort and brushes away a bead of dew. Moisture collected overnight is precious, but if left too long, it dilutes the plant's strength, he explains. The apprentice watches closely as the elder brushes each leaf with gentle strokes, almost like stroking the back of a small bird. The sound is soft. Hush, hush, hush. Each stroke creating a rhythm that feels ancient and soothing. This rhythm, the elder continues, helps the plant wake without shock. He pauses, listening to something the apprentice cannot hear. Plants, like people, rise best when not disturbed. They move to the chrysanthemum beds next. These flowers glow faintly under the soft light, their petals still curled inward from the night. The elder crouches, examining the subtle folds. Chrysanthemum must be gathered only when the petals just begin to open, he murmurs. Not before, not after. Why? Because that is when the chi inside is neither growing nor fading. The herb's spirit is at balance. The apprentice holds the bamboo basket closer, but the elder shakes his head. Not yet. First, we ask permission. The apprentice lowers the basket slowly, eyes wide. Plants have their own rituals, the elder explains. If we rush them, the medicine weakens. He brings his hands together and bows. The apprentice mirrors him. The garden remains still, but the air gathers a peaceful weight, like a temple before prayer. Only after this pause does the elder pluck a single petal, not a whole flower. It falls into the basket with the softness of a whisper. One petal holds a season, the elder says, just as a single moment holds a life. They continue, tending to herbs that once comforted emperors in sleepless nights, soothed fevers, strengthened lungs for winter, and calmed the restless spirits of scholars preparing examinations. Here, every plant is part of a lineage of healing. Every gesture is a continuation of centuries, and every breath the apprentice takes deepens his place in this silent tradition. As the morning light grows warmer, the elder points to a cluster of mint, shimmering under the sun like tiny green mirrors. Mint likes attention, he says with a rare smile, but only gentle attention. He brushes a leaf and the scent rises instantly. Cool, crisp, refreshing. The apprentice breathes it in and feels something quiet settle inside him. Not excitement, not curiosity, something deeper. Something like the calm of a still lake reflecting the first light of day. The elder nods at him. That feeling, he says softly, is how the plants know you are ready. The apprentice nods back, and for the first time since entering the courtyard, he feels he has stepped fully into a world where healing begins long before the medicine is made, where it begins with ritual, respect, and the quiet grace of listening.
Soft rays of mid-morning sunlight begin to pour gently into the herbal courtyard.
and the air warms just enough to awaken the deeper sense hidden beneath each leaf and stem. Mint sharpens, angelica sweetens, mugwort deepens into an earthy perfume, and the courtyard becomes not louder but more present, as if every plant lifts its head slightly to acknowledge the shifting hour. The elder gestures for the apprentice to follow him toward the back section of the courtyard, where the most prized medicinal herbs are cultivated. These herbs were once reserved only for the imperial physicians, plants capable of steadying the emperor's breath, cooling the fever of a restless prince, or calming an empress whose dreams had been troubled by omens and shadows. The apprentice inhales softly. The air feels heavier here, as though time gathers differently around these plants. The elder kneels beside a cluster of glossy green leaves. This, he says, is Yujin root, a medicine for clearing the mind. He brushes the soil gently with his fingertips. It is harvested only when the moon begins to wane, not to follow superstition, but to follow nature. The root sleeps lightly during that phase. It parts with its essence without resistance. The apprentice nods slowly, absorbing the idea that every herb has its own temperament, its own moods that shift with the moon and the seasons. Is that why we harvest at certain hours? He asks. Yes, the elder replies. Some herbs guard their oils until the sun warms them. Others surrender their fragrance only before dawn. To harvest at the wrong hour is like waking someone in the middle of a dream. He rises, beckoning the apprentice toward a row of tall, slender plants whose leaves shimmer like silver threads. These are the nighttime herbs. We never touch them in bright light. They wither when startled. The apprentice leans closer, noticing the faint shimmer of moisture along the edges of the leaves. Why do they shine like that? Because they drink darkness, the elder says softly, and darkness leaves its dew on their skin. The apprentice feels a strange calm sweep through him, as though the courtyard itself is teaching him to breathe in slower, deeper measures. They continue until they reach the medicinal jasmine vines climbing the old brick wall. Their fragrance is subtle now, barely a whisper, but still sweet enough to rest in the mind. The jasmine for the palace incense, the apprentice murmurs. Yes, the elder replies, and also for calming anxious hearts. He plucks a jasmine blossom that has just begun to unfurl, not fully open, not tightly closed. When the flower looks like this, he explains, its fragrance is settling rather than rising. It becomes medicine, not perfume. The apprentice brings the blossom close, inhaling the faintest hint of warmth, sweetness, and memory. And now, the elder says quietly, we begin the ritual that all herbalists must learn. The apprentice straightens. He expected instruction, yet the elder simply closes his eyes. The courtyard falls into a hush, so complete that even the distant palace walls seem to fade into the background. Minutes pass. The apprentice waits, unsure, listening to the faint rustle of leaves. Finally, the elder opens his eyes. "This," he says gently, "is the beginning of mindful harvesting. Before touching the plant, we become still enough that the plant no longer feels our presence as intrusion." The apprentice tries to still his breath, but it rattles with the nervousness of someone trying too hard. The elder smiles faintly. "Do not force calmness. Let the garden lend it to you." So the apprentice loosens his shoulders, listens rather than tries, and slowly, very slowly, his breath matches the quiet rhythm of the leaves swaying in the warm air. The elder nods when he sees it. "Now, touch the stem." The apprentice reaches out and lays 2 fingers on a soft stem, expecting the leaf to snap or tremble. Instead, it feels firm and warm, as though acknowledging him. "Good," the elder whispers. "When you harvest like this, the plant offers itself. When you rush, you steal." They walk farther, passing an area where pest-repelling herbs grow in clusters: wormwood, rue, lavender, and tiny bitter leaves used not for medicine, but for protection. "No poison?" asks the apprentice. "No," the elder says firmly. "The palace never allowed poison in the medicinal garden. Every creature sent here, every beetle, every caterpillar has a purpose. We guide nature, we do not erase it." He lifts a leaf of wormwood, showing tiny eggs beneath. "These will become lacewing insects," he explains. "They will eat the pests before the pests can eat the garden." The apprentice marvels. "So nature protects nature?" "Always," the elder replies. "We only help it choose its battles." They stand in silence, listening to the faint tapping of bamboo wind chimes placed overhead. Each tap blends with the whisper of leaves and creates a rhythm so gentle, so patterned, that the apprentice barely notices his body swaying with it, like a drifting boat surrendering to a calm current. "This rhythm," the elder murmurs, "is why herbalists rarely suffer restless sleep. You listen long enough, and the garden teaches your heart a quieter way to beat." The apprentice closes his eyes, absorbing the soft layers of sound, breath, leaf, wind, light, and realizes that here, in this hidden courtyard, healing begins long before the herbs touch the hands of a physician. It begins in the silence, in the stillness, in the moment gardener and plant breathe the same slow breath. As the sun approaches its gentle peak, the herbal courtyard enters its quietest hour, a moment that feels suspended, as though time itself chooses to rest among the fragrances drifting above the earth. The air trembles slightly with warmth, softening the outlines of every leaf, every stem, every shadow stretching across the ground. This is the hour the elder calls the listening hour, when the plants loosen their guard, when their scents rise not with urgency, but with acceptance. It is also the hour of the most delicate rituals of the day. The elder leads the apprentice toward a shaded alcove where ancient ceramic jars stand half buried in the soil. Each jar contains dried herbs from previous seasons, carefully preserved, rotated, and studied. The jars do not simply store medicine, they store memory. The elder lifts one lid. A faint aroma escapes. earthy, faintly sweet, the scent of summers long past. "Look," he whispers. The apprentice peers inside and sees leaves curled upon themselves, still carrying the ghost of green. "These are from the last emperor's final summer," the elder says. "His physician used them to calm his breath during sleepless nights." The apprentice lowers his gaze with newfound reverence. The elder continues, "We preserve not only herbs, but the way they were grown, harvested, touched. Every season teaches a lesson. We keep them alive through memory." He seals the jar again, gently, as if closing a chapter of an ancient story. They move toward the center of the courtyard, where sunlight filters through a lattice roof, scattering soft patterns of light on the stones. Here grows the royal sage, low, silver green, and incredibly sensitive. It trembles in the slightest breeze, and its healing properties were once considered essential for palace ceremonies involving meditation and clarity. The elder kneels and touches a leaf delicately. "Sage carries the wisdom of the mind," he murmurs, "but it offers that wisdom only when harvested with a quiet heart." He guides the apprentice's hand. "Feel the texture. Notice how it thickens slightly when the plant is ready." The apprentice brushes his fingers along the edges and feels a subtle firmness. "It's ready?" "Almost," the elder says, "but the plant will tell you the final answer." They wait, still, silent, letting the warmth of the hour settle around them. A tiny shift in the leaf's posture, almost imperceptible, becomes the sign they were waiting for. The elder nods. "Now." The apprentice pinches the stem, and the leaf comes away so effortlessly that he wonders if the plant released it willingly. "Good," the elder says. "Medicine is strongest when the plant chooses the moment." As they walk deeper into the courtyard, a faint buzzing sound rises, the soft hum of bees moving among flowering herbs. The apprentice instinctively steps back, but the elder stops him. "Do not fear them," he whispers. "They are part of the garden's medicine." He gestures to the bees hovering near blossoming mint and wild chrysanthemum. "These choose the healthiest plants instinctively. Watch where they land. They show us which herbs are ready." The apprentice watches closely. A bee circles 3 times before settling on a particular stem of mint. "There," the elder says, "that one holds the season's full strength." The apprentice marvels at the effortless partnership between gardener and nature. No force, no resistance, only collaboration shaped by centuries of quiet observation. They move next to a cluster of herbal shrubs used for palace teas, meant to ease the emperor's digestion and calm the mind after heavy banquets. The elder plucks one leaf and places it on the apprentice's palm. "Smell." The apprentice inhales. The scent is gentle, warm, like sunlight softened into flavor. A good leaf always smells like it remembers the sun. If it smells tired, it was harvested at the wrong hour. The apprentice nods slowly, understanding now that harvesting is not simply a task, but an art, shaped by rhythm, temperature, scent, intuition, and a kind of conversation that asks the gardener to become quieter than his own thoughts. They sit beneath the shade of a jujube tree, a tree believed to steady emotions and enhance concentration. The elder pours water into 2 small clay cups and adds a pinch of freshly picked herbs. "Drink," he says. The infusion is light, barely flavored, but it spreads warmth through the apprentice's chest, slow and steady. This is how herbalists stay awake without strain. We do not force energy, we invite it. The apprentice closes his eyes as the warmth settles deeper. The distant sound of leaves brushing against each other becomes a lullaby. Even the bees seem to hum more slowly, more rhythmically. Now, listen, the elder whispers. Every courtyard has a voice. This one sings. The apprentice listens. The breeze shifts, carrying layers of scent, mint, jasmine, chrysanthemum, sage, each note blending into a soft harmony that feels like a song woven by the garden itself. When you hear this, the elder says, you know the herbs are at peace, and plants harvested in peace carry that peace into the medicine they become. The apprentice opens his eyes. For the first time, he feels fully connected to the garden, not as an observer, not as a student, but as a quiet participant in an ancient ritual where healing begins long before herbs touch the hands of a healer. It begins in the moment when breath, leaf, light, and intention fall into the same slow rhythm.
Winter does not arrive quietly in the Forbidden City. It marches in with a slow, deliberate certainty. First as a thin, sharp wind threading through the crimson corridors, then as frost settling along the roof tiles like a whispered warning. By the time the last golden leaves have surrendered to the cold, the garden knows what is coming. And the gardeners who have watched these seasons turn for generations also know winter is not an enemy to be defeated, but a guest to be welcomed with careful preparation. The apprentice follows the elder into the courtyard before sunrise. The air tastes metallic, crisp, and unmoving. Even the bamboo, usually restless at dawn, stands still as though holding its breath. Winter begins long before snow falls, the elder says softly. It begins in the soil. He kneels, brushing away the thin layer of frost on top of the earth. Beneath the surface, the soil still holds warmth, faint, fragile, but present. This warmth, he continues, is the memory of summer. Our task is to protect that memory. The apprentice watches as the elder takes a handful of loose straw, spreading it in a thin circle around the base of a small plum sapling. The sapling trembles under the cold breeze, its branches delicate and bare. Plum trees bloom in winter, the apprentice whispers. Shouldn't they be stronger? The elder smiles. Strength is not the same as invulnerability. Even the bravest tree needs shelter. He guides the apprentice's hands, showing him how to place straw not too tightly, not too loose, creating a blanket that breathes. If the roots are warm, he says, the spirit of the plant stays awake no matter how cold the air becomes. They move toward a patch of ornamental shrubs, once lush in autumn, but now curled inward, conserving energy. The elder begins constructing a small shelter using reeds, willow branches, and rope made from rice fiber. It looks simple, almost too simple to stand against the bitter winter wind, but every angle and bend is intentional. We do not build walls, we build whispers. The apprentice tilts his head, puzzled. The elder continues tying the reeds. A shelter that is too strong traps coldness inside, but a shelter that breathes, lets the wind pass without harming the heart of the plant. The apprentice runs his fingers along the woven reeds, feeling their softness. So the shelter must move with the wind? Yes, the elder replies. Plants survive winter not by resisting, but by yielding. Snow begins to fall, soft flakes drifting from a pale sky, landing quietly on the shelter frame. The apprentice watches as the elder works, moving slowly, calmly, never rushing. There is a rhythm to it, a slow weaving, a gentle tightening of knots, a listening to the wind before placing each reed. Winter work must be done without haste, he says. A rushed knot becomes a broken shelter. A hurried step becomes a damaged root. The apprentice nods, realizing that winter requires a different kind of attention, one that listens more than it acts. They walk toward a larger tree, an aged cypress, whose branches twist like ancient calligraphy against the sky. Frost has gathered along its trunk, forming tiny crystals that shimmer in the faint morning light. The elder places his palm against the bark. Cold is not the danger, sudden change is. The apprentice thinks for a moment. So we don't protect the tree from winter, we protect it from shock? Exactly, the elder says. Just like the heart, sudden fear wounds it more than slow sorrow. He shows the apprentice how to wrap the trunk, not tightly, but lightly, with a layer of cloth woven from plant fibers. The cloth is weathered and soft, carrying the scent of past winters. Each wrap is slow, deliberate, almost meditative. Wrapping the tree, the elder says, is like wrapping an elder's shoulders. You do not bind them, you warm them. The wind grows colder. The sky shifts into a muted gray. Yet the courtyard feels strangely peaceful, quiet, steady, purposeful. The apprentice stands still for a moment, watching his breath drift into the air like tiny ghosts escaping his lips. Winter, the elder says, noticing his stillness, is a season that teaches patience. Not everything we protect must bloom immediately. Some things rest. Some gather strength quietly. Some simply endure. The apprentice lowers his gaze, realizing that winter preparation is not merely physical, it is emotional, a reminder that tending to the heart sometimes means creating space for stillness, softness, and rest. Snow continues to fall, powdering the straw blankets, softening the reed shelters, and dusting the branches of the cypress. The apprentice closes his eyes. He can hear the faintest sound, snow landing on straw, on branches, on earth. It is a soft, steady rhythm, like the quiet breathing of the garden slipping into a peaceful sleep. Listen well, the elder whispers. This is how winter speaks, slowly, gently, without urgency. The apprentice nods, and in that moment, winter no longer feels harsh. It feels like a teacher, stern but fair, cold but honest, ancient but kind.
The deeper morning settles over the forbidden city like a soft gray veil. The frost that glittered earlier begins to thicken into a quiet crust along the garden stones, and the breath of the air grows stiller, colder, more concentrated. Winter here does not roar. It tightens gently, almost politely, until everything becomes slow by necessity rather than choice.
The apprentice follows the elder toward the far end of the courtyard, where the most delicate plants are kept, plants whose roots are thin, whose leaves bruise easily, and whose survival relies not on strength, but on guardianship. A row of young osmanthus shrubs stands there, their branches small but determined. In autumn, they filled the air with fragrance so sweet it lingered in the sleeves of the palace robes. Now, their leaves curl inward like tiny fists, trying to hold on to the memory of warmth. The elder kneels beside one. Osmanthus does not fear the cold, he says. It fears loneliness. The apprentice frowns slightly. Loneliness? The elder nods. Some plants hold their warmth by sharing it. If left alone, they tire faster. He gestures at several bundles of dried reeds tied with soft hemp rope. Today we bind them, not tightly, just close enough for their breath to mingle. The apprentice watches as the elder gently bends one branch toward another, letting them rest against each other before wrapping a loose ring of reeds around them. The bundle looks like a group of friends leaning together to stay warm. Plants, the elder murmurs, are teachers of companionship. In winter, the lesson becomes clear. The apprentice mirrors the movements. At first, the branches slip from his grip, but slowly he finds the rhythm. Support, breath, looseness, balance. The reeds whisper against his fingers like winter grass. Good, the elder says. You are learning to speak winter's language. As they continue down the line, snowflakes drift in again, slow, steady, unhurried. Each flake carrying the sense that time has broadened its shoulders and spread itself wider over the world. Soon, they reach the medicinal pines, young ones planted only a few decades ago. These, the elder says, need mountain soil to survive the cold. But we are far from the mountains, so we must teach the soil to behave like mountain earth. The apprentice watches as the elder kneels and begins loosening the soil, not digging, not overturning, just gently lifting the top layer with his fingers. Mountain soil breathes even in winter, he explains. It is porous enough to hold warmth without suffocating the roots. He sprinkles a mixture of sand, dried leaves, and powdered shells across the loosened earth. This mixture imitates mountain breath. The apprentice inhales, noticing how the soil smells different, lighter, more alive somehow, even in the cold. If the soil freezes solid, the roots will panic. But if the soil can shift just slightly when the night grows cold, the roots stay calm. The apprentice reflects silently on this idea. Soil that breathes, roots that panic, winter that must be taught. It all sounds like the language of emotions. They move to the camellia plants next, sturdy shrubs with glossy leaves that shine even under the pale winter light. Their buds are tightly closed but full, as if guarding secrets that will bloom only when the cold tests them long enough. Camellias, the elder says, are proud. They do not show weakness even when suffering. He lifts one branch and shows the apprentice the underside of a leaf. Frost clings there like fine powder. We must wipe the frost before it bites, the elder says. He takes a soft cloth made of silk scraps and gently brushes the frost away. Do not rush. Frost is gentle. We must be gentler. The apprentice mimics the motion. The frost melts into tiny droplets, clinging to the cloth like a collection of small, trembling stars. Camellias bloom in winter, the apprentice says softly, so they must be brave.
Bravery, the elder replies, does not mean suffering alone. He steps back and lets the apprentice continue wiping the frost from each leaf, slow, calm strokes. With each stroke, the apprentice feels something odd. The cold no longer feels harsh when approached gently. It feels manageable, even tender. Snow thickens around them. The garden becomes quieter with each falling flake until the silence is not emptiness, but fullness, like the world taking one long, slow breath. The elder leads him to the final section for the morning, a cluster of dormant peonies, their once vibrant stems now bowed and darkened. They appear fragile, but the elder's expression softens. Peonies pretend to sleep deeply, but inside they are remembering spring. He begins covering their base with a deeper layer of straw, almost like tucking them into bed. If we cover them too early, they become restless. If we cover them too late, they become afraid. Timing, he says quietly, is its own form of kindness. The apprentice helps, listening to the rustle of straw, the faint crunch of snow beneath their knees, the stillness of winter settling around them like a soft cloak. Winter, the elder whispers, is not about surviving, it is about preparing. Plants that know how to rest bloom more truthfully when warmth returns. The apprentice closes his eyes for a moment and imagines roots deep beneath the earth, breathing, waiting, gathering strength in the cold darkness. And he realizes winter's work is not a struggle. It is a meditation, a slowing down, a returning inward. A lesson both plants and people must learn again and again with the turning of every season.
By midday, winter's quiet grip settles fully over the forbidden city, softening every sound until the world feels wrapped in a thick blanket of stillness. The sky is pale, almost white, as though it has tired of holding color. Even the crows on the palace walls speak more softly now, their calls muffled by the cold air. The apprentice walks beside the elder, noticing how their shadows stretch long and blue on the frosted ground. Winter, the elder says, as he moves toward a shaded corner of the courtyard, is when the garden teaches its final lesson of the year. The apprentice tilts his head. And what is that lesson? The elder smiles faintly. Endurance, but not the loud kind you imagine. Endurance that whispers. They stop at a large patch of soil covered by woven mats of reed and straw. This is where the most vulnerable roots of the garden sleep, the medicinal orchids, the early spring lilies, the tiny shoots that will one day become towering trees if they survive their first winters. The elder lifts the corner of a mat. Warm air escapes, carrying with it the scent of living earth, deep, quiet, comforting. This, he says, is the heart of winter protection. If the roots keep their warmth, the rest can wait. He runs his fingers across the soil, feeling its softness. Winter is not about freezing. It is about slowing. Roots slow first. The apprentice kneels beside him, touching the soil lightly, as if afraid he might wake it. Is it sleeping? He asks. Not sleeping, the elder replies. Remembering, planning. Winter is the season of hidden work. He replaces the mat gently and rises,
leading the apprentice toward the stone wall of the courtyard, where sunlight reflects faintly from weathered tiles. Along the base of the wall, several smaller plants are lined up, each wrapped in thin layers of fabric that shimmer slightly under the dim light. These fabrics, the elder explains, are not for warmth. They are for teaching the plants how to endure the wind. The apprentice frowns slightly. Teaching? Yes, the elder says. Wind in winter is like sorrow. It bends the unprepared. So we give the plants something soft to struggle against. When they learn to sway without breaking, they survive. He lifts one small plant, its slender stem leaning into the fabric as though resting on a gentle shoulder. Strength, he says, is often built in the quietest seasons. The apprentice follows him to the plum grove, where the trees stand dark and leafless, their branches like ink strokes written across the sky. Yet at the tip of each long branch sits a tiny swelling bud, still hard, still small, but full of promise. These, the elder whispers, are winter's miracles, flowers preparing to bloom in the coldest days. The apprentice leans in close, eyes widening. Before spring? Long before, the elder replies. The plum tree does not wait for warmth to bloom. It listens to the silence of winter and blooms because of it. The apprentice lets out a slow breath, watching it drift upward like fog. But how does it survive the cold? It accepts it, the elder says simply. The plum does not fight winter. It allows cold to sharpen its sweetness. They walk deeper into the grove, listening to the faint crackle of ice forming along the soil. The elder pauses beside a tree whose trunk has been wrapped in layers of straw, yet still shows ancient scars. Scars from storms, from harsh winters, from history itself. He places his hand on the old bark. "See these lines?" he asks. The apprentice nods. "These are stories." The elder continues. "The tree survived because someone, long ago, learned how to shield it. Protection is a legacy. Each generation adds to it." The apprentice looks at the wrapped trunk differently now, not as a simple winter task, but as part of a lineage stretching across centuries. They move toward the koi pond next, now frozen at the edges, but still breathing faintly near the center, where the water remains liquid. A small wooden pavilion stands nearby, holding bundles of dried lotus stems. The apprentice touches one. It is hollow, delicate, a ghost of summer. "Why keep these?" he asks. "Because winter," the elder says, "reminds us that even when the body becomes hollow, the spirit keeps its shape." The apprentice thinks about that for a long moment. Snow begins falling again, light flakes drifting like quiet thoughts drifting across the mind. The elder leads him to the final stop of the day, a narrow row of saplings tied gently to bamboo stakes. "These are the youngest," he says, "still learning the world." The apprentice kneels to inspect them. Their stems are thin, trembling slightly as the wind passes. "We tie them," he explains, "not to keep them from falling, but to teach them how to stand." The apprentice touches the bamboo stakes, strong, flexible,
patient. "So even the smallest trees learn something in winter?" he asks. "Especially the smallest," the elder replies. "Winter teaches the wisdom that cannot be taught in warmth. That strength grows in stillness, that silence is a teacher, that rest is also preparation." The apprentice closes his eyes, letting the winter quiet settle inside him. He feels it, not harsh, not biting, but deep, steady, carrying a wisdom older than the palace walls. Remember, winter is not the end, it is the deep breath before the garden speaks again. And in that moment, the apprentice finally understands. Winter is not a season of death, but a season of hidden life. Life gathering its courage beneath the earth, waiting for the perfect moment to arise.
Before the sun rises above the golden rooflines of the Forbidden City, long before the courtyards fill with sound or color, a small group of figures is already awake, moving through the pale blue darkness like drifting shadows. These are the silent gardeners, the guardians of a world few ever notice, a world that lives quietly between stone paths, ancient pines, lotus ponds, and memories carried on the wind. At 5:30 every morning, while Beijing still sleeps, they gather in a secluded corner of the inner courtyard. The frost on the bricks crunches softly beneath their footsteps, and the coppery scent of morning air fills their lungs. Some of them are young, their faces still touched by the softness of new adulthood. Others carry the serenity of decades, lines etched gently by years of kneeling beside roots and listening to the whispers of leaves. But all of them share something unspoken, a devotion so calm and steady that it feels older than the palace itself. Their day begins not with words, but with breath. Each gardener stands still for a moment, allowing the cold to settle around them. In that silence, they practice a ritual passed down from their teachers and from the teachers of their teachers, stretching back generations. They breathe in slowly, as if inhaling the memory of the garden, and breathe out gently, as if returning something back to it. Only then do they begin their work. The first light has not yet touched the sky when they split into pairs, each pair walking toward different sectors of the Imperial Gardens. The youngest apprentice walks beside an elderly master, whose movements are so fluid, so quiet, that even the birds do not startle. "We begin early," the master murmurs, "because plants wake earlier than emperors." His voice is soft, almost blending with the breeze. The apprentice nods, remembering his family's stories. His father and his father's father were also gardeners here. The Forbidden City does not hire gardeners from outside. You join only if someone before you has offered their hands to the earth within these walls. It is a lineage, one woven not through royal blood, but through patient labor and the silent pride of generations who tended the same trees, the same stones, the same water reflections. As they enter the pine pavilion garden, the darkness begins to loosen its grip. Faint light pools between the trunks of the ancient pines, trees so old that emperors who once walked beneath them have long become names carved on stone tablets. The gardeners do not bow, but something in their steps softens, acknowledging the age of these silent giants.
The master places a hand on one trunk, his touch lingering. "Your great-grandfather fixed a broken root here," he says quietly. "He used silk cloth and river mud. The tree remembers." The apprentice's breath catches. He never knew the story, but somehow he feels the truth of it in his bones. The garden keeps memories differently than people do, not with words, but with growth rings, with scars, with the gentle tilt of branches shaped decades ago by hands now gone. They begin the first task of the day, checking the moisture of the soil with their palms, pressing into the earth, not to disturb it, but to listen to it. "Soil," the master once said, "does not lie. It tells you when it is weary, when it is thirsty, when it is holding too tightly or too loosely to life." As they work, the sky lightens into a wash of soft winter gold. Other gardeners move through neighboring courtyards with tools wrapped in cloth to muffle their sound. A rake glides quietly across fallen pine needles. A bucket is set down with care, making no more noise than a heartbeat. In a place once reserved for the footsteps of emperors, these quiet gestures become a form of respect. But there is more than respect at play. There is kinship. Many of the gardeners grew up together. Some are cousins. Some learned the names of plants before they learned the names of distant relatives. Their earliest memories are of running through these courtyards, chasing leaves that danced in the wind, sitting under the shade of the Sophora trees, listening to their elders speak of roots as if they were people with temperaments and moods. The apprentice remembers being 5 years old, holding his grandfather's hand as they crossed the courtyard at dawn. He remembers the smell of warm soil, the feel of dew on his sleeves, the gentle pressure of his grandfather's thumb tapping twice, a signal that meant, "Listen, the garden speaks." Now, as he walks beside the master, he finally understands what that meant. The garden does speak. It speaks in silence, in rhythm, in patterns only visible to those who wake before the sun and work until its last light slides behind the red walls. "We are here," the master says softly, "not to make the garden beautiful. The garden is already beautiful. We are here to keep it alive." The apprentice feels a warmth spread through him that has nothing to do with temperature. It is the warmth of belonging, of stepping into a chain of hands extending back 6 centuries, each pair passing its tenderness, its quiet strength to the next. And as the sun finally rises, washing the courtyards in a soft gold that makes every branch glow like brushed bronze, the gardeners continue their work, not seeking thanks, not seeking recognition, but fulfilling a promise whispered across generations to tend the heart of the Forbidden City as gently and faithfully as one tends the quietest corners of the soul.
As the sun rises fully over the Forbidden City, its golden light filtering through the winter haze, the silent gardeners settle deeper into the rhythm that has shaped their days for generations. Their work is not hurried, nor is it slow. It is purposeful, like the steady beat of a heart that has learned the value of consistency. By 7 in the morning, the palace grounds are filled with a quiet kind of activity, movements so gentle that the air around them barely stirs. In the Imperial rock garden,
where stones are arranged like frozen waves from a dream, two gardeners climb the rugged formations to check the health of mosses clinging to their surfaces. Their steps are deliberate, their hands steady. Moss here is considered more than decoration. It is memory made visible, a silent testament to the moisture and temperament of centuries. One gardener brushes a finger across the moss and smiles faintly. "Still breathing," he murmurs. His partner nods. Then the garden is happy today. Down below, another pair moves along the edge of the Lotus lake, now covered in thin ice that breaks softly when touched by the morning light. They kneel to check the water beneath the surface, dipping their fingers carefully through a small opening in the ice. The water is cold but alive, swirling faintly with the slow pulse of the lake. Lotus roots don't fear cold water, the elder gardener says to his young partner. They fear sudden change, so we watch for signs of confusion, not suffering. The apprentice leans closer, listening not just to the words, but to the tone. Calm, steady, patient, carrying the softness of someone who has waited many winters. Across the courtyard, near the Hall of Supreme Harmony, three gardeners kneel together, repairing the soil around a centuries-old cypress. They speak very little, but their silence is the comfortable kind. Silence built from years of working side by side, understanding each other through small gestures. One taps the earth lightly, another smooths the surface, the third gently adjusts the cypress's lower branch to ensure it grows at the correct angle. They work like three breaths of the same body, moving toward the same purpose without needing instruction. Deep within the gardens, near a quiet corridor that most visitors never see, the youngest apprentice is learning an essential routine, sharpening tools not for cutting, but for respect. His instructor hands him a pair of pruning shears wrapped in soft cloth. "Sharpen them as though you are speaking to the tree," she says. "Every cut is a conversation. The cleaner the cut, the gentler the conversation." The apprentice nods, feeling the weight of the shears. He listens to the faint sound of metal brushing against stone as he sharpens them, a soft, steady rhythm like a whispered mantra. "Don't sharpen with impatience," the instructor warns. "Plants can sense hurry. They close themselves." Farther west, near the Jade Terrace, a pair of senior gardeners inspect the pebbled pathways, each stone placed in precise patterns centuries ago. These stones are more than pathways. They are stories. A shift in one pebble can change the way rainwater flows, and water, in turn, shapes the soil beneath. The gardeners walk slowly, reading the subtle language of stones. "This one has tilted," one says, "not from weather, but from someone stepping too quickly." They fix it together, pushing the pebble back into alignment with the patience of men who know that even the smallest detail affects the breathing of the garden. As the morning deepens toward noon, the gardeners pause at the same place every day, a modest pavilion with an open roof where sunlight spills through like warm silk. They do not stop to rest their bodies, but to rest their minds. They drink warm water, sometimes tea brewed from herbs grown in the palace itself, and they breathe. There is a quiet hum of tranquility between them, No chatter, no complaints, no pressure to speak. Silence is their shared language. One of the elders, his beard streaked with white, finally breaks the quiet. "My teacher used to say," he murmurs, "that a gardener's greatest tool is the ability to disappear. If the garden looks tended, but no one sees the tending, then the work is perfect." The others nod. They do not strive for recognition. They are proud of being unseen. A young apprentice looks at his own hands, the faint lines of soil embedded in the creases, the light scent of pine lingering on his skin, and wonders how long it will take for him to move with the same gentleness as the elders. "You will learn," an older gardener says, noticing the boy's expression. "Hands soften with time, and when hands soften, the heart listens better." After their brief pause, they return to work. In their movements, there is a profound beauty. Beauty not meant to impress, but to endure. They prune without wounding, sweep without erasing, water without drowning. Every gesture carries the wisdom of centuries, and by the time the sun stands high in the sky, casting long lines of gold across the roofs, the garden looks unchanged to any casual eye. But the gardeners know the truth. Every inch of the forbidden city has been gently touched, breathed upon, listened to. Their care is invisible, yet everywhere. It is the kind of work that feels like prayer.
By afternoon, when the sun begins its slow descent and the light softens into a warm amber glow, the silent gardeners move into the most intimate part of their daily rhythm, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. This is not a formal lesson, nor a scheduled ritual. It happens the way water moves across stone, quietly, patiently, shaping without forcing. Deep inside the palace's northern garden stands a small pavilion where the elders gather in the afternoons. The pavilion is simple: worn wood, faded paint, a roof slightly warped by time. But it holds something more valuable than any treasure: the memory of 6 centuries of hands teaching other hands. Today, as the shadows stretch long and thin, the youngest apprentices join the elders there, each carrying a tool wrapped in cloth: shears, brushes, wooden rakes, bamboo poles polished smooth by generations of palms. The moment they step inside, the noise of the world fades. It is as if the pavilion has absorbed so much patience over the centuries that even sound enters softly, hesitant to disturb the air. An elderly gardener with silver hair tied back in a small knot gestures the children to sit. His movements are slow but precise, like someone who long ago mastered the art of using only the energy he needs. Tools, he begins softly, are not extensions of the hand. They are extensions of intention. One apprentice tilts his head, trying to understand. The elder smiles. A hand can cut with anger, or it can cut with care. The tool only reveals what the heart is doing. He lifts a pair of shears. The blades catch the late afternoon light. If your heart is calm, the cut will be kind. Plants respond to kindness more than technique. The apprentices listen with a quiet intensity, their eyes tracking every movement. They have heard stories about this elder, how he once restored a dying pine by tending it every morning for 7 years, speaking to it in the same gentle tone he now uses with them. Today, he says, you will not practice cutting, you will practice holding. He hands each apprentice a dried twig taken from the garden floor. Hold it as if it is alive, even when it is not. The apprentices cradle the twigs carefully, and for a moment the pavilion feels like a cradle of reverence. Another elder joins, a woman with steady hands and a voice soft enough to quiet any storm. She teaches them how to read the health of leaves by touch alone. She places a leaf from an old camellia into a young apprentice's hand and says, "Close your eyes. Leaves speak through temperature. If it is cold, the plant is frightened. If it is warm, the plant is trusting." The apprentice closes his eyes and feels the warmth in the leaf, surprised that he had never noticed such detail before. The elder nods approvingly, as though he has unlocked a door the boy didn't know existed. Outside, the wind shifts, brushing softly through the pine branches overhead. It carries the scent of resin and winter dust into the pavilion, stirring the long sleeves of the elders' robes. The children sit straighter, sensing the weight of the moment. The training they receive is not taught anywhere else, not in books, not in academies, not even in other imperial gardens. It exists only here, in the quiet cradle of time, in a lineage protected as carefully as the rarest tree. A third elder approaches, moving slowly, but with a kind of quiet gravity that commands attention. He has tended the rear courtyard for over 50 years, and the trees there are said to lean toward him when he walks by. You must know that our work is not a job. It is a conversation with time. He draws a line in the dusty floor with a bamboo stick. A gardener does not change the world in a day. Your touch today may not bloom until 10 years from now, or 20, or after you are gone. His gaze softens, but it will bloom. The apprentices sit in stillness, absorbing his words the way soil absorbs winter rain. And then comes the moment that always marks the emotional center of their training, the recitation of the gardener's vow, a promise passed down quietly for hundreds of years. The eldest gardener closes his eyes and begins, his voice almost a whisper. We care for what outlives us. We tend what forgets us. We guard what does not speak. And in return, the garden holds our footsteps when we are no longer here. The apprentices repeat after him, their young voices trembling but earnest. It is not dramatic. It is not ceremonial. It is honest. When they finish, the elders look at the apprentices with a warmth that feels like sunlight filtering through old branches. Soft, golden, patient. The youngest apprentice, the one who always felt unsure if he belonged, feels something shift inside him. As he repeats the vow,
He understands why his grandfather, even after retiring, would still wake before sunrise and walk along his small courtyard at home, brushing the leaves of his potted plants as though greeting old friends. It wasn't duty. It wasn't habit. It was devotion. The same devotion carried by every silent gardener across time. A devotion that needs no applause, no witness, no praise, only presence. Outside, the sky deepens into a gentle twilight. The elders rise slowly, stretching stiff limbs, and gesture for the apprentices to follow. "Come," one elder says, "the trees are waiting." And together, old hands and young hands step out into the fading light, united by a purpose that has flowed quietly through the Forbidden City for 6 centuries, steady as breath, gentle as dusk.
Even in the modern age, where the rhythm of life accelerates like an ever-moving river, the Forbidden City remains one of the few places on Earth where time still slows down. Here, within the red walls that have witnessed dynasties rise and fade, the gardens breathe with the same calm cadence they held centuries ago. Yet something subtle has changed, not in the trees, not in the stones, not in the ponds, but in the world around them. The city outside pulses with neon lights, hurried footsteps, endless notifications. But inside these ancient courtyards, the silent gardeners continue their work, just as their ancestors once did, their movements echoing through 600 years of memory. Morning arrives quietly. Instead of the wagons and horses of old, soft electric carts roll along the inner paths, carrying tools wrapped in cloth and buckets of water drawn from modern filtration systems. Technology hums gently in the background, present but never dominant. The gardeners embrace it the way one might accept a new breeze entering an old home. Useful, but never allowed to disturb the spirit of the place. One elder moves slowly beneath the branches of a Panlong Sophora, now supported not only by traditional wooden braces, but also by discrete carbon fiber frames designed to strengthen without altering shape. He runs his hand along the bark, his fingers remembering the stories embedded in every curve. "Modern tools," he murmurs, "but the same heart." A young gardener beside him nods. Will these methods last another 100 years? The elder smiles faintly. Only if we remember why we use them. They continue walking, passing a lotus pond where water sensors now rest beneath the surface, monitoring temperature changes the way gardeners once did by touch alone. But even with this new assistance, the gardeners still kneel by the water, dipping their fingers in, feeling its pulse. "Machines tell us numbers," one gardener says gently, "but only the hand can tell us mood." Nearby, under a row of cypress trees, a small group gathers for the Monday ritual, the only day the Forbidden City closes to the public. It is the garden's day of breathing, a day untouched by footsteps or camera shutters, preserved for restoration, reflection, and silence. Modern visitors know nothing of what happens here on Mondays, but it is the day when the gardens whisper their clearest truths. Old tools are sharpened. Branches too shy to be pruned under public eyes are trimmed. Soil is turned softly with both wooden tools and updated stainless steel rakes that glide more efficiently but are always handled with traditional gestures, slow, respectful, deliberate. In the pavilion where elders once sat teaching apprentices, a new generation sits in the same positions, holding tablets that display decades of recorded plant growth alongside handwritten garden journals preserved from the Ming Dynasty. The blending of modern and ancient knowledge is seamless, like water blending with ink. A young apprentice scrolls through a digital archive showing how a certain pine leaned more toward the west over the last 20 years. An elder watches quietly from behind. He asks, "Do you see the pattern?" The apprentice nods. It leans toward the winter sun. The elder smiles. "Good. The tablet shows movement, but your eyes show understanding." Outside, a soft winter breeze moves through the camellia trees. Several gardeners work together to adjust protective coverings, combining old techniques, silk wraps and straw, with new biodegradable fabrics engineered to retain warmth. A visitor passing by might think the materials are modern, but the intention behind every touch is ancient, and that is what keeps the gardens alive. Knowledge here is not a relic, it is living breath, exhaled, inherited, rediscovered, passed onward with tenderness. As the afternoon light grows softer, the forbidden city seems to glow from within, as if illuminated not only by the sun, but by the echo of countless hands that once shaped these gardens. And in this glow, the modern world fades to a gentle background hum, as though the palace itself insists on reminding the earth that slowness, too, is a kind of wisdom. A young gardener pauses beneath an old pine, listening to the distant murmur of the city, then to the deeper quiet of the courtyard. He breathes in, long and slow, and whispers, as though speaking to both the past and the present, "We are still here." And the garden, in its ancient stillness, seems to whisper back. As afternoon deepens, the forbidden city takes on a quiet radiance, a kind of muted glow that settles gently across the courtyards like a silk veil. Tourists are gone on Mondays, and the empty pathways echo softly with the faint sounds of tools brushing earth, fabric rustling in winter air, and distant birds perched along the roof ridges. In this calm, the silent gardeners move with unhurried grace, weaving ancient techniques into modern practice as naturally as a thread slipping through old embroidery. At the edge of the plum blossom court, a young gardener kneels with a small wooden brush, its bristles made of goat hair, crafted exactly as it was centuries ago. Beside him lies a modern soil analyzer, blinking gently with numbers he barely glances at, because before he reads any data, he performs the ritual first taught by gardeners of the Ming Dynasty, brushing fallen dust away from the base of each tree, not to clean, but to listen. The elder who taught him once said, "Dust falls where breath slows. When you sweep it away, you reveal how the tree slept last night."
And so he brushes slowly, letting the texture of the soil guide his fingers. Only after the brushing is complete does he glance at the analyzer, nodding as ancient instinct aligns with modern measurement. Further north, near the Jade River channel, another group kneels along the stone banks, checking the water flow. The channel was built over 500 years ago, designed with subtle slopes that allow water to travel from one courtyard to the next without pumps, an ingenious system that still functions perfectly today. Modern engineers have studied it, marveled at it, tried to replicate it, yet the elegance of its design remains uniquely timeless. A gardener lifts a bamboo stick, placing its tip gently into the water. The ripples reveal the speed of the current. "Still breathing," he murmurs. His apprentice asks softly, "Why not use the digital sensor?" The gardener smiles, dipping the stick again. "The sensor tells you the speed. The water tells you the story." In the herb garden, where medicinal plants still grow in quiet rows, an elder tends to a patch of chrysanthemum used for traditional remedies. She uses modern gloves made from biodegradable fibers, but her posture, her breathing, her intention, these have not changed in 6 centuries. She plucks a leaf as gently as if waking a child. The apprentice watching her asks, "Is this how they harvested herbs in the Imperial days?" The elder nods. The technique is the same, only the world around it changed. She shows him the leaf's underside, running her thumb across the central vein. "See how it bends? That means it's ready." "And if it doesn't bend?" the apprentice asks. "Then we wait." Gardening is the art of not rushing. Beyond the herb garden lies the ancient rockeries, towering structures of Taihu stones, full of natural holes and strange curves. In the dim afternoon light, the stones look almost alive. Traditionally, gardeners would inspect these rockeries for signs of erosion and lingering moisture, using only their hands and ears. Today, tiny fiber optic cameras and humidity sensors can enter the deepest cavities. But even so, the gardeners still tap the rock with their knuckles, listening to the sound it makes. A hollow tone suggests dryness. A muted resonance suggests retained moisture. No sensor can replicate the emotion carried in that sound, the memory of rocks shaped by centuries of wind. Near the western wall, a pair of gardeners tend to a century-old wisteria whose branches twist like flowing scripts across the frame of a lattice gate. New metal supports, thin as brushstrokes, hold the branches safely without altering their movement. A young apprentice asks, "Will these modern supports change how the wisteria grows?" The older gardener shakes his head. "No, the plant writes its story. We only protect the paper." In the center courtyard, the gardeners gather for the afternoon coordination, still done verbally, never through radios or devices. Communication here is built on intuition, eye contact, and the subtle shorthand of people who have shared seasons together for decades. One gardener gestures toward a pine in the distance. Another nods, already understanding what needs attention. No words necessary, because the gardens themselves taught them how to read each other. It is this merging, ancient thought, modern tools, and the quiet intelligence of the garden that protects the legacy through centuries. And as shadows lengthen, the Forbidden City feels suspended between 2 worlds, one shaped by history, the other shaped by the present, yet both touching each other softly,
like two hands meeting across time. In this quiet convergence, the gardens remain what they have always been, living archives of patience, living diaries written in leaves, roots, and water, living memory that continues to breathe. A young gardener, sweeping pine needles into a neat circle, suddenly pauses and looks up at the sky. The city's modern skyline rises faintly in the background, but here it feels distant, softened, almost imaginary. "It's strange," he whispers to an elder nearby. "The world keeps changing, but the garden feels constant." The elder smiles, adjusting the bamboo broom in his hands. "Because constancy," he says, "is not the absence of change. It is the ability to change slowly, gently, without breaking." And in that moment, the young gardener understands why these ancient techniques still live, because they allow the garden to grow without losing its soul.
As evening settles over the Forbidden City, the last rays of sunlight stretch long and thin across the red walls, turning their surfaces into quiet rivers of fading gold. The garden paths empty once more, leaving behind only the silent gardeners and the soft echo of their footsteps. It is at this hour, when the world seems to exhale, when light folds itself gently into dusk, that the legacy of 6 centuries feels closest, almost tangible, like something you could reach out and touch with your fingertips. A young gardener finishes sweeping a path lined with ancient stones. He pauses, watching how the shadows of pine needles fall across the ground, delicate as the strokes of a calligraphy brush. These shadows, an elder once told him, are also part of the garden. Even what disappears matters. He breathes quietly, understanding now what he couldn't understand years ago. The silent gardeners do not protect the gardens only for today. They protect them for the gardeners who will come long after they are gone, for hands not yet born, for eyes that will one day study the same curves of bark, the same quiet ripples in the lotus pool, the same whisper of wind through the wisteria vines. Near the camellia court, an elder adjusts the protective covering once more before nightfall. His movements are slow now, but still steady. A younger gardener rushes to assist him, but the elder shakes his head gently, a faint smile on his lips. "Some things," he murmurs, "you must do with your own hands, not for the tree, but for your memory of the tree." Together they secure the covering, and for a moment time feels circular, like the stories passed down through generations are looping through the air, returning to where they began. Beyond the courtyard, the faint hum of modern Beijing fades into a low murmur, like the sound of distant waves. The contrast is striking, a world of speed just outside, and here, a sanctuary of slowness, of presence, of tender attention. The silent gardeners begin their final round of the day, walking slowly along the garden borders, checking that every plant, every stone, every breath of nature settles calmly into the night. They touch tree trunks with warm palms, not inspecting, but reassuring. They kneel by the frozen edges of the lake, brushing the surface lightly, greeting the water as though greeting an old friend before parting for the night. They walk through the bamboo corridors, listening to the soft clatter of stems tapping gently in the wind, a sound like quiet applause for the day that has passed.
Far in the inner courtyard, the apprentices gather one last time. Their tools are cleaned, dried, wrapped in cloth. The elders join them, carrying the weight of decades in the soft bend of their shoulders. "Do you know," an elder says softly, "why the gardens have survived 600 years?" The apprentices remain silent, waiting. The elder looks at the sky, now shifting into deep blue, with the first stars trembling into existence. Because people cared, not loudly, not with pride, but quietly, consistently, every single day. He pauses, letting the stillness expand between them. Gardens live on the rhythm of gentle things, patience, breath, small acts repeated with love. The apprentices lower their heads, absorbing his words the way soil absorbs the first touch of spring rain. "And so," he continues, "you must care for yourselves the same way, slowly, kindly, without force." He glances toward the sleeping trees. Even rest is an art the garden teaches. A soft breeze drifts past them, carrying the faint scent of pine and winter dust. The palace lights begin to glow, small lanterns flickering to life along the distant corridors. The gardens, wrapped in deepening shadows, seem to settle inward, folding themselves gently into quiet dreams. The elder's voice becomes softer, lower, almost a whisper. "Like these gardens, your sleep also needs tending, not rushed, not demanded, but guided, the way a gardener guides a fragile branch toward the sun." He steps back, allowing the weight of the day to dissolve into the falling night. "So tonight," he murmurs, "let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Let the world outside become distant." The apprentices close their eyes, breathing with the rhythm of the evening wind. "Sleep," he whispers, "is simply another kind of garden, and you are its quiet keeper." And as the last light fades beyond the red walls, the forbidden city becomes still as a held breath, its gardens dreaming gently under the watch of their silent guardians, just as they have for 600 years.